Hello viewers, this is Shahid Imran again, once again, and with another guest. And we have to say thanks for accepting my invitation to Carly. She is a co-founder of PPC Farm, and we have to today we are going to talk about once again on the PPC topics like auditing, and we have lots of topics today to cover. We have already discussed with her, and let's start directly with her. Thanks for accepting my invitation, Carly.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and as always nerd out on Amazon things and PPC.
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So I was checking you were also in summit of AI in Amazon. It was
Yeah,
like
yes, it was the PPC Mastery Summit. So AI was one of the big topics. I mean, I was also just recently at Unboxed, and Amazon is going heavy in AI, whether that's Rufus or the new, Creator Studio, where you can use AI to create custom content and images and things like that for your ads. So yeah, AI is a big deal right now, for sure.
yeah, that's probably a big deal. We will try to uh, highlight some of the topics from that also. So first, the first thing first, let me know your introduction. How do you came in the niche of Amazon and from the coming into the Amazon niche and from to tell the founder of the PPC firm?
Yeah,
What is the story
definitely.
behind of Carly?
Yeah,
I will.
thank you. So, um, how I got started was actually working for the parent company of PPC Farm, who has been selling on Amazon for over a decade now, with thousands of SKUs and dozens of brands at this point. And basically, that parent company had to figure out PPC on Amazon and also how to scale it across this huge portfolio of SKUs and lots of different categories and niches. And then they were kind of like, well, you know what? I think other sellers could benefit from our knowledge, right? And our processes and systems. And so from there, about 2.5 years ago, the parent company decided to start an agency. And we also built our own proprietary software, but we've decided to go with the agency route rather than like a SaaS product, at least for now.
Okay.
And so around 2.5 years ago, I started the agency with them. But I had originally started at the parent company as a product developer, developing products to sell on Amazon. So doing everything, from the sourcing to influencing design, and then of course finally actually listing the product, and then figuring out how to market it as well. So kind of from all the way from start to finish, understanding how to sell products on Amazon. So yeah, that's pretty much how I got started and how PPC Farm got started as well.
Okay, that's good. I was wondering with one question that was taking more, frankly speaking. I have seen you have listed in your certifications about SAPES level 4. Is
Oh,
it true?
yeah. So, like I said, I got started doing product development, and so a big part of that is sourcing, right? So I do have a certification in SIPs. Yeah, I don't use it as much these days, right, with PPC, but it was really valuable to kind of understand more about supply chain and inventory management and sourcing and all of that. But yeah,
Because
yeah,
that is entirely a different nation. PPC
yeah.
and this thing is that is an entirely different world. I was wondering how you are managing both of them equally. And oh, okay, let me ask another question quickly. How what benefits you have to till yet from SAFe certification in Amazon in development and shipping or logistics and sourcing or whatever anywhere in your experience?
Yeah, for sure. So, as you mentioned, it really does not relate at all to advertising and PPC, but it really helped me at the kind of beginning of my journey on Amazon in product development, right? Understanding procurement, understanding kind of how to negotiate with suppliers to get better deals on the products that we were sourcing and developing. A lot of the products that we created or developed were customized, right? So it's not just like going and ordering something off the shelf from Alibaba, right? I mean, it's having to kind of shop around for suppliers, and not only suppliers that supply kind of one component of your product, but these are multi-component products, right? That require like plastic injection molding and that kind of thing. And of course, I had a team to help me with some of this stuff, but having that foundation from SIPs in sourcing and procurement, supply chain, and all of that helped me to kind of better understand kind of what I needed and how, again, to negotiate with suppliers and things like that.
Okay, that's great. That's great. Okay, let's get back to the topic of the
Yeah,
podcast.
that's okay. It's interesting.
Yeah, it's looking like we are going to discuss supply chain,
Yeah.
but yeah, but we are not. Okay, so let's get start from the first question we have already discussed about. We have also shared with you. So that is a question I ask to everyone whenever I met with a PPC guy or a PPC expert. About audit. How many points do you have audit? And after all of that, we are going to discuss a little about gross profit. But first, the first thing first, how do you guys audit a brand? Which KPIs you guys are utilizing, and which are them helpful for the audiences or brands?
Okay. Yeah, the audit is a really important stage whenever we're kind of deciding whether or not to work with a client. It's not only important for the client, but it's important for us too, to make sure that, we're a good fit for them, because I think, it really depends on a lot of different factors and whether or not an agency is a good fit for a brand. There's no one size fits all kind of approach. So the audit kind of helps in both of those regards. But what we look for in an audit, I mean, we have over 52 kind of checkpoints that we're diagnosing when we do a PPC audit, and they kind of fall into some high level categories. So one of the first things we'll look at is structure, campaign structure. So we are big proponents of single ASIN, single ad group, single match type campaigns, and we are very I guess, evangelical about this, because it allows you to have the cleanest data possible, right? If you don't have single ASIN, single ad group, single match type campaigns, you're going to run into a lot of issues kind of attributing performance within the data. So it's very difficult then to know, which search term is matched with which ASIN if you don't set up your campaigns like this, right? Unfortunately, I wish that Amazon had a better way. This is actually one of the questions I asked the Amazon representatives at Unboxed, is like, can you improve this, right? When we have clients come on with these big like they just throw all their ASINs into one auto campaign kind of thing. It's like, okay, sometimes you can kind of guess, that because
So,
of
what was their
where
answer actually when you asked them?
they said we will triage it and get back to you. so so I'm
Okay,
still waiting for a reply. I gave them my email, but we'll see what happens. It's been a week already and I haven't heard anything, but that's okay. They're moving at the speed of Amazon. I get it. But yeah, so that is one of the first things we look at is campaign structure. So do you have that structure? If not, that's going to be one of the a quick area to improve, right? It does generally involve setting up new campaigns in that case, which I know can be tough for some sellers to accept, because we do observe that Amazon is somehow giving preference to campaigns that have kind of been set up already in the account, something like a legacy campaign. We don't know why. This is still a little bit of a black box to us. Sometimes that happens, sometimes it doesn't happen, but anyway, so yeah, first point we look at in an audit is campaign structure. So if they don't have that, then that's one of the first things that we'll tell them, hey, we highly recommend that you set up your campaigns in this way, for clean data, and then also to be able to do another part of our strategy, which is our farming strategy, which is where the name PPC Farm comes from. And we can talk more about that later. But having those single match type campaigns allows us to execute on that particular strategy. So that's kind of the first area of what we look for in an audit.
okay. The first thing you guys go for the campaign structure, and what are the rest? You have highlighted the fact you guys have 52 points actually. You
Hmm.
I, obviously those 52 points are not the checklist for every brand. I can understand it,
Right.
but if I ask you, let's say these are five or three, or whatever you want to highlight, these are most crucial for any of the brand.
Okay, I'll keep going. I wanted to pause because I was like, oh, maybe I'm talking too much. So yes, okay. So
No, no, no,
campaigns.
no. We can discuss it a little. I had another question. Have you guys ever published those point on any blogs or anywhere else
Like exactly
with
what
the
we look
case?
at in our audit.
Your points, have you guys published them anywhere?
No, right now we have not. We don't have
Those are
any
some
information.
back strategies. Okay,
Yeah, for now. I
then
mean, I'm
got
not saying that we never will. You know, it's not like we're the first people to advocate,
okay.
this kind of campaign
Then
structure or something like that. Yeah. So
yeah.
yeah. So first, campaign structure, as I mentioned. The next thing we're going to look at is branded search, and I know that this is kind of controversial on whether or not to do brand defense. In our opinion, in most cases, like 9 out of 10 cases, we find that it's beneficial actually to not do brand defense. Basically, what's happening when you're doing brand defense is you're cannibalizing your organic sales. Those are sales you're going to get anyways. If someone is searching for your brand name, they already know that they want your product. It's pretty unlikely that they're going to switch. And even if they do, and I do have this published. We have a calculator that you can download to see for yourself whether or not the conversions that you might be missing out on by not doing brand defense would impact your bottom line or not, or to what extent they would. So you can kind of decide whether or not brand defense would make sense for you. But yeah, so that's the second kind of big high level category that we look at is whether or not a brand is doing like too much brand defense. And we find that a lot of our clients who switch over from other agencies, they have a lot of branded search within their campaigns. And that's honestly probably because branded search delivers great ACOSs. Like you're going to get amazing conversion rates on those branded keywords because of course that person already knows that they want your product. So if they know they want Nike and they type Nike into the search bar, you're going to get, and you are Nike, you're going to get great conversions on any search terms containing the word Nike, right? And so, yeah, when we turn off branded search in new clients accounts that we've onboarded, all of those sales essentially move from the PPC revenue column over into the organic column. So overall sales stay the same, but you're just getting more organic sales because
Okay.
so
Yeah.
often, the sponsored result will show up right next to the organic result, particularly on branded search, because you kind of already own those top spots. You are that brand, right? So, yeah, so that's kind of the second thing that we look at in an audit.
Okay, got it, got it. So the second point you have highlighted that was about brand keywords.
And so the third thing that we look at in an audit is uh, bidding, right? Basically, like a lot of this is one of the biggest section is how is a brand bidding, right? Are they bidding correctly? Are they bidding too high? Are they bidding too low based on the margin of their product? And so for the purposes of our audit, we'll kind of just use an average margin. But let me back up a little bit and what I mean by that. So the way that we run PPC is highly focused on profitability. And I know we're going to talk a little bit more about that today, but the way that we ensure that's happening is by using the gross profit margin of an ASIN as the target ACOS for that ASIN. So remember, within our structure, we have single ASIN campaigns. And so we're able to get really granular and ensure that every single term and every single campaign is moving towards the target ACOS of an ASIN, which is influenced by the actual profit margin of that ASIN. So whenever we work with new clients, one of the first things that we need to do is get their margins and like their cost of goods, and then we'll deduct FBA and referral fees on our side. But that is the most important number, because without that information, you're not able to really determine whether or not your campaigns are successful. So for example, you might think that you want a 20% ACOS because that's a good low ACOS. But why, right? Why are you aiming for 20%? Is it just because it sounds good? Or is that actually influenced by your margins? So, for example, a 40% ACOS might be acceptable for an ASIN because it has really high margins, that kind of a thing, right? So that's kind of the next thing that we're looking for in our audits. And for the purposes of the audit, we'll use, like I said, just an average for all ASINs. But once we really start working with clients, we use the margin of each ASIN individually. And so it makes it really easy for us to tell whether or not ACOSs are good or bad within the client's current campaigns, and then whether or not they're bidding too high based on what their margins are. We typically start off with a maximum bid of 20% of whatever the profit margin of an ASIN is. You can do the math in your head, but we can adjust up or down from there. And then obviously, that's flexible in our system as well. We can set overrides and things like that to adjust based on strategy. Like if you want to launch and rank an ASIN, then you might be okay with accepting a higher ACOS, something like that, for example. All very flexible. But that number then allows us in our audit to determine whether or not you're bidding correctly, bidding the correct amount based on the margin of your portfolio of ASINs.
Okay, so that was something like you have talked with the numbers, like you have concluded it. You whenever you guys are onboarding a brand, you have calculated it in the start, like by 20% or by 40%, or why not 10%? We can also say in this way. So can I ask a little more in depth, like what if what are the exceptions? Are you guys doing it with your experience, the calculations? Like we how do you know that the specific bid is going to get with the time and with the passage of time lower and lower or lower? Or let's suppose we can take an example of any keyword, and right now the top 100% bid is like $2 per click. And how do you guys may, and the order ratio is 26 per order, and how do you guys manage those KPIs to make it like you can say successful, make a successful deal out of it?
Yeah, so it all comes back to that target ACOS, right? Our system is using that target ACOS, which is based on the profit margin of the product to determine what the bid should be. And of course, you need to gather data in order to do that, right? So, but once you have enough term level data, which is most importantly clicks and sales, you're able to determine whether you should increase or decrease the bid or keep it the same, right? And so our algorithm within our software is doing this for us, right? I mean, of course, a human can always oversee this, and you need the human to be in there to fly the plane and to adjust things as they're seeing in the data. But a lot of the heavy lifting is handled by our software doing that math to determine, based on a lot of different time periods of data, how to adjust the bid and what the correct bid should be. So for example, you have a term where in the past 7 days it has a really great ACOS, but the past 28 days the ACOS is looking worse, and actually lifetime it's even worse. So what do you do with this information? Do you increase the bid, or do you decrease it, or do you let it ride, right? So that's a lot of data for a human to try to digest and make a decision, but our algorithm is able to do it automatically. And that 20% of gross profit that I mentioned as a maximum bid is really just a starting point. And of course, will be adjusted once we get data and more information on how an individual term will perform for an ASIN.
Okay, it's looking like it is totally being managed by the software. You guys have implemented all of the KPIs behind it, and there is a one human, and he's obviously overseeing, and he's also doing the some management individually. And by this way, you guys are managing like the big data. When I'm talking
Yes.
about big data, there are like more than 100 and 500 SKUs at one time. Can I have an idea how many SKUs you guys are managing, and what is the
Thousands. Thousands, yes. Thousands.
okay
Yes.
thousands?
So
So
you need to
now,
have the software to be able to scale, to do that at scale, right? There's no way that a human could go in there and monitor each bid every single day. We also have day parting within our software as well, so bids are getting adjusted every hour.
so now let me ask you the question I wanna ask in the start. So I thought I will ask a bit later. Why gross profits and ads on is the only thing is matter does matter.
Yeah. So this is kind of the foundation of everything that we do. Like I said, it's built into our bidding algorithm with the profit margin being the target ACOS, being the target that our entire system is built around. But if you think about it, like let's say you're like, you know what, I really want to rank on page one. Okay, well, let me ask you why. Why do you want to rank on page one? Oh,
Yeah, that's a question. Why?
right. Why?
That's a,
Why do you want to be the top spot? Well, okay, well, what would your answer be to that question? Why do you want to rank on page one?
for the visibility.
For visibility. Okay, but why do you want visibility? Like why do you even want those eyeballs on your ad? You might
Mm,
say
for sales,
for sales.
for
Yes, of
getting
course,
click.
right? Yeah,
Yeah,
to get the
yeah,
clicks, right? We can go down the whole funnel, right?
yeah.
And so you want visibility. This is kind of a shorthand because you think that that's going to equal sales. Okay, great. Why do you want sales? Okay,
For
well,
profit.
for profit, right. So if you kind of go through this line of questioning, you're always going to come back to profitability. So even if you are doing like a launch and rank kind of a strategy, the long-term goal is always going to be your bottom line, like the money that's going into your bank account. And sometimes, it's okay to sacrifice gross profit for short-term revenue because you need kind of like cash to run your business or whatever that may be, right? But at the end of the day, what we care about and what our clients care about is that money going into their bank account. So this is like a pretty simple concept, but you might be surprised at how many folks get these things confused. They think they want visibility, they think they want sales, but what they really want is profit. And so sometimes it'll take, 30 days for the client to see, you know what, actually my payouts from Amazon are getting bigger. I think you guys are doing a good job, right? It's kind of the question of, do you want to sell 100 units and make $10? Or do you want to sell 10 units and make $100? Like, which one would you have? Which one would you rather have? And this is something that is kind of a difficult sell sometimes. It's like, we're going to decrease your sales, but you're going to get more profit, right? And this is not always how it plays out, right? I mean, there's certainly cases where basically the client's product is not at its sort of deserved ranking, and so we're able to grow it really fast and we grow sales and profit at the same time. But sometimes it's the case where, because of the way basically the math shakes out on the profitability of an ASIN, they're simply not going to be able to afford to spend what they need to on advertising to maintain profitability. So sometimes we'll see clients come in the door where we run the math on their margins and they're actually losing money on every single sale because their cost of goods is too high and their price is too low. But their price has to be low to compete in the market and to win the buy box, right? And so this is the kind of situation where it's like, you kind of have to tell folks, like, I'm sorry, but your business is unprofitable. You need to either change, your cost of goods or your pricing. And this is a little bit where the sourcing and procurement kind of comes in a little bit to
Yeah, yeah.
understand how these
That's
this
something like
dynamic works together. Yeah. And so there's also, of course, situations where you can lower your cost of goods by selling more units because now you're playing the volume game, right? That can happen as well. But yeah, so that's why profit matters, right? And like I said, it can be confusing because sometimes those goals are competing. Like a goal of revenue and a goal of profit can sometimes be, conflicting, because getting more revenue does not always equal getting more gross profit. And so I think that sometimes folks can confuse that a little bit.
okay. That's a good way to summarize it. But I have a little a little sub question from it.
Hmm.
As we have discussed, do you wanna sell 100 units and $10
Hmm.
profit,
Hmm.
or do you wanna sell 10 units and $10 profit?
Hmm.
Which way do you wanna
Yeah.
choose? What if let's assume I'm a client and you guys are managing. What if I say no, I wanna go with the $100? How what would you? No, 100 units. What would you guys say?
And that's fine. I mean, we can absolutely accommodate other kinds of goals. However, we know from experience that ultimately that client is not going to be super happy, right? Because again, they think they want to sell units because they think that equals profit, but really they want more profit. And so, like it's everything within our strategy and within our system is flexible, but and so, we'll tell clients, I can do that for you, but you're going to be losing money, right?
Obviously, there
And
are the funds.
yeah, like
And
that if that's
that's
what you
the
want, we
thing.
can do that. But ultimately we might not be the best fit for those kind of clients and the kind of models where that's their only KPI, that's their only goal, is to move units and get sales. And again, if that goal is in service of a long-term goal of profitability, that makes a lot of sense. I mean, and sometimes we run into cases where like the lifetime value of a customer is kind of calculated a little bit differently. Like if you have a product that has a recurring purchase cycle, that kind of thing, then we might be okay with losing money on ads because we know that the money we're making back, it's not just that one sale. It's we know we're going to get this person to come back and purchase, once a month. And so we know that the lifetime value is higher. We're okay with spending a little bit more, but it really depends on the client and their particular business model.
Okay, that's a good way to a little summarize it. Obviously, there isn't a perfect way and perfect recipe for every brand. We can say obviously there are some sub scenarios we have to consider every time before implementing anything, and we as a business owner, everyone does know that. So before going towards next questions, I have almost two questions next. So, but before the further questions, I would love to know. I was listening another podcast of yours. Sorry, the post of yours. I was reading your post, one of the you post in the
Hmm.
past. So you have mentioned farming strategy. What is
Hmm.
that actually?
Yeah, I'll explain that. And I also still have one more section of the audit that we that we do, but it's related. So I'm gonna
Okay,
share both. Okay, so the fourth, and I guess in this case there's technically a fifth, but that's basically just like listing optimization. So I'm not going to go super deep into that there. But the fourth category that we're looking at within our audit is targets. So
okay.
how many keywords are you bidding on in each of the match types? How many broad keywords, exact keywords, phrase, negative, auto, etc. are you utilizing within your campaigns for each ASIN? We break it down by ASIN. And so the reason that this is important is because it's a really big red flag to me. If I go in your account and I see that you're only bidding on 5 exact keywords and nothing else, and maybe you have an auto campaign running for that ASIN, that's an immediate, like, I know that I can grow this ASIN because there's so much untapped potential for that ASIN. There's so many keywords that you're not bidding on. There's so many other ways I'm sure that you could describe this product or that people might utilize this product that you're not tapping into that market, right? So an example I've used recently would be something like um, an egg slicer. Like, you use it to slice an egg, and yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it can be used for eggs, but it can be used for all different sorts of vegetables, right? And so if you're not capturing this market of other people looking for cucumber slicer or strawberries or whatever, then you might be missing out on this kind of big portfolio of keywords that you might need to make your product successful. Like you're basically just going too narrow, right? So that's another big area that we look at in our audit is how many keywords, like, are you, how wide are you casting that net? How many keywords are you bidding on? Are you utilizing auto campaigns? Are you not? um, are you utilizing negatives or are you not? This is a really big area as well, which is targets. And so if, let's say, I run into a client where I can see that they have a very low number of targets, exact, broad, phrase, they're not utilizing this to the extent that they should, although we don't use phrase, but that can be another topic of conversation. But um, then the recommendation I have for them is farming. So farming is not, we are not the first people to come up with this concept. I'm sure you're familiar with it. I'm sure your viewers are as well. It's essentially keyword harvesting. So we utilize our farming campaigns, which are broad match, category targeting, and auto targeting, to discover new search terms. So we'll put our seed keywords into the broad campaign and then choose a category, and from there allow customers to tell us what they're searching for. So for example, with egg slicer, right, instead of, I'll just put egg slicer or slicer or something like that as my broad seed, and let the customer come and tell me what they search for when they convert on this specific product. And that allows us to then discover those customer search terms that are proven to convert for our product and move those over into then exact campaigns. Again, we are not the first people to do this, but that is what the farming strategy is. So the reason it's farming is because we use seeds in our broad campaigns to discover these keywords. We then harvest them into exact campaigns, and throughout that process we're doing something called weeding, where we're utilizing negation to negate either terms that have already converted in our farming campaigns or terms that are irrelevant to that product, right? So for example,
I
with
think
the egg
it's not
slicer.
about the. I think it's not about if we are the first, if someone is first, if
Yeah.
someone else is doing. I think it's more about how we are doing it, or what, how better we are doing it, or
Mhm.
how we are implementing it. Because we in nowadays we are running, we are facing the problem of data isn't the we don't have the information. We have too much information, and utilizing the information is the in a right way. I think that
Yeah.
is one of the our biggest problem we are facing. Like,
Mhm.
and we Amazon sellers has different thousands of the techniques for the PPC, and for actually for which one is suitable for you. That is that is the main problem. Like, we have 52 points of the audit, but we do know on the 52 we are not going to apply all of them. Obviously
For
we
sure.
have to, yeah. So that's why I asked which one that is you will go through, and that was really good, great.
Yeah, so this is
So
a very fundamental kind of PPC strategy, and it's old school, but the reason that it's still around is because it works, like you said, right? So you can listen to all these gurus and YouTubers or people on LinkedIn or whatever talking about these different hacks and whatever, but you really need to cut through the noise and figure out like what is your foundational strategy? Why are you doing these different things? Like, why are you listening to this hack? How does it fit into your strategy, right? If you just go and try all the hacks, like you might win, but you might not understand why, right? And so how can you then repeat this kind of this performance, right? So having that foundational strategy of something like this with farming allows you to not only understand how PPC works, but then it also allows you to then decide whether or not those hacks make sense for you, right? For your product, for your brand. And this farming strategy is flexible as well. Like, we can go really hard with farming, like we can put a lot of spend into farming and go really hard into keyword discovery. um, or we could just say, you know what, our budget is $200 for farming and keyword discovery. Well, if we discover a lot, great. If not, you know what, that's it. We just want to do 200 for this. Otherwise, let's go with the keywords we already have and double down on those, right? I mean, it's very flexible. But yeah, the purpose of it is finding that big portfolio of keywords that are proven to convert for that specific ASIN. And sometimes it's surprising, like what people are actually typing into the search bar. It's impossible to predict, so it's much better to just let them come to you and tell you what they're looking for when they convert on your product.
that's a really nice way to answer it completely. I'm really satisfied with. So now let me ask almost my last question of this podcast, or
Mhm.
ultimately we have to just we are coming the second last part of this podcast actually. So I have a question. Frankly speaking, as you have said in the last few minutes ago, cut the noise. Are we facing the noise about AI, or is it in real? What are
Yeah,
your
so
thoughts
when
on
it
that?
comes to AI, I think there's definitely a lot of noise. I think that it's a big buzzword right now, and I think that people still aren't quite sure how to use it, right? Everybody thinks that they need it because it's new and exciting, but I don't think that people really understand how it will fit into their overall ads strategy, right? And whether or not it's actually beneficial to people, we need to to wait and see, right? I mean, I don't know if you've played around with Amazon's Creator Studio and their own AI, but it's not, I mean, it needs some work. I think that it's still in its
Yeah,
infancy. They're still experimenting. They're still figuring things out, and I think that's kind of the same for everybody right now. We're trying to see how can this really help us to save us time or improve our services for our clients, right? There's definitely sometimes when I have Amazon create an ad for me or like a piece of creative, and I'm like, I can't share this with the client. This is ridiculous. Like, the other day I was working on a product and there was a candle in the background, and then the AI like put flames on my product, and I'm like, no, my product is not a candle. This is super weird. So it's definitely still very buggy, in terms of what Amazon offers as AI. But one of the things I am really interested in is how advertising and Rufus are going to interact, and how ads are going to be displayed on Rufus. I mean, we've already seen, I mean, I'm sure if you go into campaign in your campaign manager now, you'll see that little notice at the top of campaign manager saying, hey, by the way, your ads are going to start appearing in Rufus. And it's like, okay, cool. What does that look like? How do I optimize for that? How can I ensure that I'm, showing up the way I want to it within Rufus searches and things like that? I think that um, Amazon is still kind of like, again, testing things on their side, and we're still kind of waiting for more information to see, how can we as advertisers, benefit from this and utilize it.
okay, that's great. Yeah, they, as you have mentioned, they are just experimenting lots of things. There are lots of bugs, and we have to improve it a little. Thanks for that, man.
Yeah.
So we have to improve, we have to improve a little, and they have to improve a little. Sorry. So yeah, I think we have to go with a little flow, as with a little old school things and a little with updated things. A
Yeah.
balanced approach, I think.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you can't know whether or not these new things are going to be suitable for you or work for your brand or your ASINs unless you understand like how the machine works, right? So that's why it's important to take the time to understand PPC, and also understand your campaigns and why or why not your campaigns are or aren't working, and then from there you can decide if it makes sense to implement new things within your kind of arsenal, like AI or things like that.
Okay, I think before ending it, I would love to ask. Actually, there are lots of things we have discussed, and those are all are being, and those are all practical. And you have gone through with them dozens of times. And let me ask you just last question of this podcast. What are some of the what are your, like, if you are ask me, I will go give from my experience from the procurement, from the supply chain, I will say these three things brands don't. They just overlook. But according to your experience, what two or three things brands every time they do overlook, or they're doing still mistakes, and you will
Yeah.
suggest them to don't, because it's not good for the gross profit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and that's going to be one of my first ones, right? Don't overlook your gross profit. Make sure you understand your bottom line. Make sure you have a really good understanding of your cost of goods and all the fees and everything that you're paying, so that when you go engage an agency or engage other freelancers, you know exactly how much you should be budgeting, for ads, right? You know what your thresholds are. And I think any good agency or freelancer should be asking those questions as well to their clients, because that's, again, at the end of the day, that's what everyone's really after is more money in their bank account. So don't overlook that part of your business. And that's just good business. That really doesn't have much to do with advertising, but advertising, it affects everything else, including advertising. So that would be my first thing. Don't don't overlook your actual profitability. Make sure you have a really solid understanding of your margins, and making sure you're getting the most for your money there. And then the second thing, which we already talked about today, is don't underestimate or overlook just a solid, old school type of PPC strategy, which relies on essentially the fundamentals of what PPC is, what are basically the game that we're working within. Amazon, it is kind of a game, right? It's kind of like playing a game, and you need to understand all of the rules of the game, including like what each match type is actually doing and why you're using that match type. Because if you don't understand those kinds of basic PPC 101 things, you're not going to be able to interpret your data in a reliable way, and you're not going to be able to then expand on those strategies and then start going into more high level PPC strategies involving things, with more factors at play. Like once you start getting sponsored brand, sponsored display, DSP, and retargeting, and all of those kinds of ad strategies, without understanding, fundamentally these sort of PPC concepts and even e-commerce uh, concepts, then it's going to be very difficult for you to successfully move on and advance in your business.
Okay, these are really great tips, and if someone is going to follow, I'm glad they are going to win the game somehow. Even
Hmm.
they will be able to change the game. As you have mentioned, it's a game,
Hmm.
and you have to know the every rule. And I think it's a right time to end it.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time today. I hope that it was helpful for people. If anybody wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, you can find me at Carly McMillen on LinkedIn. Or if you want to learn more about the agency, it's ppcfarm.com. And we do offer a 60-day free trial to new clients so they can kind of put us to the test. Um, I can sit here and talk all day, but until you see the results, who cares, right? So just
Yeah.
wanted to throw that out there. And yeah, feel free to reach out.
Uh, Why not? And I will mention your links all of in the product description. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much.